Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I am Leslie and this over here is my cat Pixel that you can see in the corner. Today I wanted to talk to you about things I would have done differently in my first apartment. I have been an apartment dweller for a solid 17 years, I think. I was in my first apartment when I was like 18 or 19 and I'm 36 now. So it's been a long span of apartments. I think I've been in like 6 different ones maybe. But I can still remember things that I did in my very first apartment that I just wish I would have done differently. And since a lot of you are interested in the decluttering, downsizing type videos, I thought it might be helpful if you're someone who is looking for their first apartment or getting out on your own, just to keep some things in mind. The very first one on this list, and the one that I have the biggest regret regarding, is I felt so much pressure to fill the space. So buying furniture, buying decorations, buying whatever it was to fill the space. Because I had been living in the dorm room in college, and then I went from the dorm room to an apartment. And I remember when I just moved my stuff from the dorm room to the apartment, I only had stuff from my bedroom and that was it. So I'm just thinking, oh, I need this and that and this, and just making a list in my head, and I need all this kitchen stuff, because the only other experience I had had was living with my family. And a family of 4 needs way different stuff than a single college girl. So I made the mistake of just completely overfilling my apartment. The good thing is I actually didn't spend a whole lot of money because I went to yard sales, I got hand-me-downs, but the problem was this was the first step to me owning way too much stuff. Another thing for someone who tends to move through different apartments, what comes into your apartment must go out. So keep that in mind, because when I started getting all this stuff from my apartment, and even when I was just filling up my dorm room, whenever I had to move out, I was like, how do I have so much? It was just so much to carry. So remember, what goes in must come out, and just always keep that in mind. A lot of people like the one in, one out because it can really contain that and make sure you're not bringing in too many items. Another thing is to keep in mind with your furniture. So this has to do with moving different apartments too. Not all your apartments are going to be the same. You're not always going to get a bigger apartment. So unfortunately, or fortunately, I think it was my 3rd apartment, it was really big. So I started buying all this furniture to fit this big apartment, and then when I moved out of there, it was a smaller apartment, and I had so much trouble figuring out what to do. My apartment after that was just so cluttered because I didn't get rid of enough of my furniture. I had bought a king bed, which is what I have now, this huge freaking bed that I really didn't need, and I bought way too big of furniture, and I wasn't keeping in mind that I'm not always going to have a bigger apartment. So if you can, try to do furniture that is more for a small space. Things like storage ottomans, a folding table, just anything that can be compacted, where if you don't always have a big space, you can still keep your furniture. Another thing that can be kind of difficult, you really want to keep quality in mind, but I know this is a tough one, especially if you're young, that you kind of just have to buy what you can afford. But I know for me, there are some things I bought that were just such horrible quality, and I could have gotten something way better for the same price. So definitely keep in mind the quality, because it's so much better to buy a piece that you can keep with you, and whenever you're going to move to your different places, it will stay with you and it will hold up to moving. Because I know some of my stuff just got broken because it was so cheap when we moved, so keep that in mind. Another thing would be not to go crazy with the decor. So you don't want to be focusing on filling up your walls and your shelves and all this stuff. You want to focus on the basics. Make sure you have, I was gonna make a list of basic furniture you need, but honestly it's so different for everyone. I would say like a kitchen table, but not everyone needs that. I know I didn't have a kitchen table for a while. I just ate at my desk. So I mean, whatever is essential for you. I mean, obviously a bed, I guess, would be essential for everyone. Some kind of storage space, maybe a shelving unit of some type, of bookshelf or whatever, that kind of stuff. If you have a lot of clothes, you're going to need a nice sized dresser. So just figure out the furniture you need and really think through it. Think if you really need that piece or not. Because like I said, what comes into your apartment must go out. So you don't want to be bringing in furniture that you're just not going to need or not going to use. I know with me, another mistake I made was just accepting what other people would give me. So anything that was just kind of free to me, I would take it and run. So I got this huge kitchen table. I mean, one of those that like you'd find in your grandma's house for Christmas dinner, like really big tables that have like the leaf thing that you can extend the table with. We have one of those and it was ginormous. So it fit in one of my apartments, but it obviously didn't fit in any other. That was such a bad idea, but I took it because it was free to me. So just because it's free doesn't mean you need it in your apartment. So really think through that kind of stuff. Another thing to avoid when you're buying your first apartment, or any apartment really, would be impulse purchases. Just really keep in mind what your space looks like, how big it is, what you can fit into your space. So you don't want to be going crazy buying like kitchen gadgets or just random wall hangings or whatever it happens to be. You really want to think through everything you're bringing into your apartment. Think if you need that. Does it fit with your style? Does it literally physically fit in your apartment? Whatever it happens to be. Another tip is to not buy huge sets of things. So things like a big set of dishes, that's a big one that I messed up on. Especially if you're single, you don't need that many dishes. A couple plates, couple forks, knives, whatever, just like maybe 2 of everything. I bought a full set with like 4 of everything. Like 4 big plates, 4 small plates, 4 mugs, 4 cups. Like it was so many dishes that I just didn't need. So I ended up over the years getting rid of them, and I did so much better keeping up with my dishes with just like 2 of everything. In some cases, you could probably even have 1 of most things. I think I only had like 1 butter knife and I was totally fine with that. So just remember, keep in mind that how many people are living there, for one. If you're the only one, you do not need these big sets of things. And the same can be said for furniture sets. I know those aren't really a big thing now. A lot of people just buy separate pieces, but if there's a big furniture set, you probably don't need all those pieces anyway. And keep in mind, you can always borrow things. There's the library, you have friends, like there are a lot of situations, family, where you could just borrow an item. So maybe check around with some people you know. I know this is a tough one because for me, I moved around a lot and there's just not always someone that I can borrow stuff from. But that's okay. At that point, you can go ahead and buy, do whatever you have to. But it's always a good idea to kind of check around if there's something that you need. The very last tip is probably one of the most important, and that is to declutter regularly. So if you keep up with decluttering your apartment, do the 1 in, 1 out rule, do like a weekly reset, whatever you have to do, whatever your method is, just keep decluttering in mind, because it's so much easier to declutter when you have a smaller space and a smaller number of things. The more you have and the more you add to your collection of stuff, it gets so much harder to declutter, because after you keep seeing the same things all the time, it almost just becomes part of part of what you own, and it's really hard to see yourself without it, even if it's something you don't use. I don't know if that makes sense, but you just get so used to seeing it that you don't even think about getting rid of it, because you're like, oh yeah, that's my collection of oil paint, even though I tried it once and will never do it again. So whatever it happens to be, it really takes a lot of effort to reevaluate your stuff, because you have to picture yourself without it instead of just accepting it as something you own. And I kind of touched on this before, but I just wanted to reiterate, take into account who is living with you, because if you're single, you need so few things. You can get by on so little when you're single. I'm so annoyed that I didn't get into all this declutter stuff back in the day when I was single, because it's so much harder as a family, because you've merged 2 people's stuff plus your kids' stuff, and it just really starts to pile up. So if you are, especially if you're young, if you're getting your first apartment, if you're single, just be careful, because it starts to compound so much. So I really hope this list has helped you. I know I would have loved to hear this stuff when I was getting my first apartment. So I just really hope it helps somebody. Maybe it'll help you kind of think twice about what you're doing. And the number one thing that I needed to hear was that you don't have to fill your space. It's okay to have an empty wall. It's okay to have an empty room, maybe. Maybe you have like a whole extra room in your place that you don't use. It's okay to have empty drawers. It's an empty closet. You can have empty spaces in your home and it's totally fine. No one is going to make you fill those spaces. You can do what you want with your space. If you're watching this now, are you looking into getting your first apartment? Or if not, if you're someone like me who's lived in a bunch of them, do you have any advice? Because I'm curious if I left anything off this list. I know I really wish someone had given me kind of the rundown of what it's like to have your first place. So just leave a comment, like, subscribe, do all the YouTube things, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.